Tommy Rex, and you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now, here's your host.
The Sonic Temple Art and Music Festival returns May 14th through 17th with My Chemical Romance, Tool, Bring Me the Horizon, and Shinedown. Plus, Pierce the Veil, Good Charlotte, The Offspring, Sublime, Godsmack, Breaking Benjamin, Marilyn Manson, and so many more. Sonic Temple in Columbus, Ohio, May 14th to 17th. Passes on sale now for as low as $1 down at sonictemplefestival.com.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle, and I am talking to members of the band Altira. What's going on, ladies?
What's up?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about having this conversation today because I don't just want to touch on the music. I also want to touch on like the background and the faith aspect. Yeah, I'm excited about this. But usually when I have people on for the first time, I like to go way back with them. So do you remember when you were little kids, what you originally wanted to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an astronaut.
Me too.
And made my parents buy me a book about space from Sam's Club.
Oh,
it was a big book.
I didn't get that far.
And I wanted to own a bakery. That's what I wanted to do when I was little.
That's kind of cool.
Nice. And then when was it that kind of music came into your lives? Some of the earliest influences that kind of inspired you towards this direction?
I think, for me, music kind of started developing when I was 3 years old. But I think it seriously took off when I was around 7. And honestly, some of my biggest influence was my dad. He introduced me to so much of his own music. Some of the first stuff I was playing was Joe Satriani and Bad Company. That was some of the first couple CDs that I was learning to play the drums and stuff. And he was a big influence, just sharing all of his catalog and stuff with me.
Nice.
For me, it kind of started with in elementary school. We had talent shows at my elementary school, and me and my friend decided to do a song. She was taking piano lessons, and so she played the Beauty and the Beast theme song, and I sang to it. And that was the first time that my parents saw me sing at all, because we practiced at her house. So, so that was my first foray into public performance.
And then for me, I started playing the flute when I was in 8th grade. So that's when music started happening for me. But then I decided to pick up the guitar, and I was this is the best thing ever. And I really loved 80s music and still do. So that's kind of what inspired me to play the lead guitar.
Awesome. And then when you started actually getting together with like-minded individuals and playing out live, what was the scene where you guys grew up at?
Ooh. So I grew up in Austin, Texas, which is the live music capital of the world. And I had been playing on stage since I was 7. And then I kind of ended up getting involved in kind of more of the, the other public stages when I was around 12. And it was so interesting to literally be a child down there playing shows with all these grown people. And, which was honestly, I think, just some of the best exposure to my own creativity and getting to watch other musicians do so much in my own city. It was amazing. But at the same time, Yeah, I don't know. I think it was truly just like it was really good to just be exposed to that like all the time. But I was also heavily involved in like my church. So then getting to play every Sunday, like for the worship band and stuff, that was also just like so really good for my development in music and stuff too.
Well, I was 18 when I joined my first band, which was Fireflight, and we were based out of Florida. We were like in a rural town in Florida, Central Florida, but there's a lot of, at the time, well, we practiced and played and practiced for years before we finally like started being not embarrassing to watch. And so, but once we started, like it was really when like the hardcore scene and everything was huge. There was lots of venues in Orlando and stuff like that, and we had Cornerstone, Florida at the time, and so it was a great environment to develop in and to play out in because the scene was just really rocking at that time.
Yeah, and I grew up like in Southern Illinois, so the music scene, there's not a huge music scene there, but I've always been involved in my church, like Gina, so that's kind of where I've developed too. Was in the church, and you know I'm not too far from Music City, so definitely have made lots of trips there.
Nice. And then yeah, you mentioned Fireflight. You know, I recall on my journey, I on my last deployment, I kind of like had a bunch of like God moments. You know, I was raised Catholic, and but I kind of drifted away. You know, it's like God never leaves, but I seem to leave quite a bit, unfortunately. And, I ended up going through like a rough time in my deployment with addiction and stuff like that. And I came home and had my come to Jesus moment, got sober, got saved, and started, I was big in the rock scene and the metal scene here in Cleveland. And I was just like, I was afraid that I was going to have to give all that up, once I got saved. I thought it was going to be like Kumbaya and stuff, and everything. And I actually took my daughters to a live fest here in Ohio a few times. And I recall seeing like you guys play there. And then I was like with you guys, Skillet, Red, a bunch of the bands. I was like, wow, I think I can do this, faith journey and still rock out, So I appreciate that. But like, always curious about like band names. So what inspired Fireflight?
Fireflight was actually just kind of a nonsense word. We were at our first show, which was for our youth group. And we were like getting ready to play, and the youth pastor walked in. He's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go out and introduce you guys in about 10 minutes. No, what's the name of the band?" And we realized that we had not picked out a name because we were just so scared of playing that we just been practicing. And so we were supposed to be thinking about names, so we hadn't talked about it at all. And I was like, "Well, I thought that Fireflight sounded kind of cool," and they're like, "Okay, let's just do that. We're doing that. Tell them Fireflight." And that's how it started.
Nice. And you know what was beautiful for me on my journey and growth, getting to see you guys perform with. I'm a father of two daughters, and what's been great about, I got sober when my oldest turned 8 and my youngest turned 5. And so that's when we started, going to live fests and, going to church more often and everything. But what was beautiful was seeing, women taking the stage and rocking out, to share that with my daughter so they could look up and be inspired by you guys. I remember like Unbreakable was like, that was like their jam, growing up and stuff. So I wanted to ask about that. That became such a huge hit, but you want to share a little bit about the message behind that song?
Yeah, absolutely. We wrote Unbreakable actually when we were getting ready we had come into town for Cornerstone, Illinois, and we were sleeping on the floor at a church, and then during the day, leading up to going to play our set at Cornerstone, we just like went in their sanctuary and we just set up all the equipment and we worked on writing. And I can remember I was sitting on the steps, like it was one of those church stages where there's like steps that go up to like all the way around, so I'm just sitting there on the steps with everybody's jamming out and they're coming with ideas, and I just started writing down lyrics and stuff like that. And the story of the woman that was brought before Jesus by the Pharisees, and they threw her down, the woman accused of adultery, and they're hoping that Jesus is gonna, either persecute her or break the law in their opinion, so that they could, try to trap Jesus, And so, but Jesus turned it around on them. He told them, "He who is without sin, go ahead and throw the first stone." And they just started like sneaking off in embarrassment. And then it was just him and the woman. And he said, "Where are the people who accused you?" And that's the first line of the song. And so like, I just was in that story, and just the spirit of the song is to realize that God is ready to stand by our side, even in our darkest moments, even when everyone turns against us and is trying to turn us into an example and all sorts of stuff like that. God still stands right by our side. He's ready there because he's so much bigger than the mistakes that we make. And he sees who he made us to be and who he made us to be, And if you've got God on your side and he's the one holding you up, then nothing can stop you.
That's beautiful. Like I was saying, like God never left me, but I left him for a number of years, living my way. And even 17 years sober, it's like there's days I just like I take the keys away from God and, like try and drive into the medium, because I can't direct my life without him. And I need to call on him all the time for my actions. That's why another song that, I was attracted to was the Core of My Addiction single. You want to share a little bit about the inspiration on that song?
Yeah, I think that song has kind of like evolved for me personally, because I've realized through the last, like, I don't know, I guess 3 or 4 years that the song, it was about calling out to God and trying to shift away. We're always trying to create things inside of our lives that help us like deal with our anxiety and our fear. And we use these things to try to escape and try to gain control of things we just feel like we can't understand, like life is out of control. And we try to fill those empty places with stuff that makes us feel better, And so many people, we turn to drugs and alcohol. For me, I turn to people pleasing. I have codependency addiction, and it causes me to be hyper vigilant, just making sure everyone's happy with me all the time and always putting myself last. But that's how I dealt with my anxiety. And sometimes people they'll drink to deal with their anxiety. They'll do drugs to deal with their anxiety, that kind of stuff. And so that's been a really crazy journey for me, because like once I started like getting into 12-step groups and realizing, okay, this is like my default setting. I have to be actively working against this, And so in that song, it's about kind of sublimating that and looking and seeing like this hole inside of us, we're not going to be able to fill it, with other people's approval. We're not going to be able to fill it with drugs or alcohol. What we really need is to see ourselves through God's eyes. We need God's perspective, We need him to fill that space for us so that we can keep healing and doing the hard work to step out of that kind of stuff. And for us, it really kind of, I know for me, it just boils down to fear. I was struggling with fear my whole life. And that's really what was in the driver's seat. And that, Altira, we got your back.
I unpaused
right,
it. I'm good.
Resumed. Okay. So, as I was saying, for me, my journey was really ultimately about fear. I just had so much fear that I was carrying, and it was really calling all the shots. Every decision I made it according to my fear. And because I was trying to protect myself because of my like childhood traumas. And that's really led, but in the last several years, I've been like on a new journey of trying to dismantle that in my life, and it's been really painful. And so many things have opened my eyes. And I think right now, our country, the world really is just kind of facing like exceptionally dark times. Like I've never seen so many, you know, people just pitted against each other. We're just all fighting and squabbling about everything all the time. And I really think what it is that everyone is just really struggling with their fear, and they're trying to regain a control that they lost in their lives. Like when the pandemic happened and we all questioned, you know, the future of the human race. That's a big like fear trauma. And I think as a result, we're just seeing all of these kind of our most basic human behaviors coming out, you know, anger and fear, denial, all these things. And it's really got us in a headlock. And so with Altira is Hebrew for fear not. And our EP is called The Death of Fear. And really our big push in the music and touring right now is just that we want to ask God to touch us all again and help us to put down the mantle of fear that is just in the driver's seat, because God's not given us a spirit of fear. He's given us a spirit of power and of love and of self-control. And I'm not seeing very much powerful living. I'm seeing a lot of anger. I don't see a lot of love, you know? And so it's our hope that through the music, that God would work inside our hearts and inside the hearts of all the people, you know, to help build us back up again and restore us so that we can truly be like the hands and feet of Jesus here on earth.
Yeah. You know, it's funny how, you know, well, it's not really funny, but how the enemy will work and try and tell us, you know, that isolate us, keep us isolated, keep us feeling like we're alone. Everything you were just talking about, I still struggle with, you know, and we like to think we're like so unique and everything, but I know, you know, that's the lie of the enemy. But
divide and conquer.
Yeah, but I know, you know, I mean, as a man, you know, it's like we're like culture says, oh, we can't show fear, we can't be afraid. So what is my default? Well, it's usually, unfortunately, anger, you know, and then that pushes, you know, the people around me that love me away. You know, it causes issues in my relationship, and it's just like, but I also struggle then with that other side. Like you said, I'm an attention and affirmation addict. You know, I need to feel affirmed and loved by all, you know? So then when I make the mess, you know, it's just like, you know, I want you to come help me clean it up, but I shouldn't have made the mess in the first place, you know?
It's so much. Like for me recently, the biggest help that I've had is just really doing a lot of hard inner work and looking at like I read, like, you know, when you feel yourself kind of like starting to spiral out of control and you're like, oh no, it's happening. Like, what if you take a deep breath and you stop and you just get curious about it? Say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. What if I try to look at it objectively? And a lot of the inner work that I've done in therapy and stuff like that more recently is trying to find that little me, like little Dawn, when she was 7 and things went sideways, you know, what was she going through? You know, and I'll find similarities in what's happening to me now. These are the things, and it's triggering me. And now I kind of flip back to my 7-year-old self, and I feel out of control. I'm terrified. I've got anxiety, you know, and I have, you know, but the truth is I'm not 7. I'm 44, and I can take control, but I can't get control while I keep falling into these wounds. So it takes a lot of work and really inviting. For me, I try to invite God in, you know, and I see my little self. Now she's sitting in God's lap, and now she is, you know, able to use his strength to stand up, you know, and I can slow my breathing, stop the physical reaction in my body, stop, look around and make a good choice.
You know, I was literally just having this conversation with my fiance because, you know, my dumb butt did it again, you know, and acted out and made a mistake. And I tried sharing because I've done, like, since back from my deployment when I got early in sobriety, I've been doing a lot of work. I still see therapists at the VA and everything.
Awesome.
but we talk about that inner child, you know, and it's just like, okay, well, there's one particular thing that triggered it. When I go into the therapy session, we focus on what triggered that one particular thing that usually goes back to like my childhood. And we work on how to address that one particular thing. But then when I act out and with something else comes up, I try and explain, well, yeah, okay, why am I acting like that? Maybe there's something else I need to focus on that happened as a child. Yeah, why I'm reacting that way. And she's kind of like one of those, like, you know, I mean, I need accountability. I am an addict and I go to the rooms to seek accountability, but she's like really hardcore about keeping me accountable, which I don't mind. I learned to pause now. I learned to shut up and listen, you know, but I just kind of wish she understood the inner child thing that I'm explaining to her. Yeah. It's not an excuse, you know, of why, but there is more to it, you know?
Well, and she honestly, she probably went through her own childhood, right? And maybe there were things that happened in her that was to her that made her feel out of control. And she learned that she had to do these things to try to keep herself safe. So she could be triggered too at the same time.
Yeah. That's definitely happening. There's a lot of fear going on between both of us right now. And not to put all my business out there, but yeah, you know, it's just like I'm just being real.
Nobody talks about it, and that's why we're all a mess.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what that's why I love having these conversations. I mean, I know we got to plug the album and plug the music and stuff like that, but I love getting real with my guests on here.
Well, for us, this is what the music is about. So
yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, I totally feel you. And this is going to be, I guess, you know, not only plugging the band, but my personal therapy session. So thank you.
We'll send you our bill.
And I guess, I mean, I want to ask about your single Black Hole. Is that kind of going back to what we've already mentioned about trying to fill that hole inside us?
Well, actually, Black Hole is, it's really a song, like, it's kind of like a worship song in some ways, because you're singing to God. And for me, a lot of times in my life, and even talking to other people, so especially people, if you had like a rough childhood and you've had a real mental health journey, you know, like it's all been a journey for a while. A lot of times it can be really hard to find people who understand what you're going through. And even if you do have people who want to try to understand, it's really hard to open up to them as well. So it can be like a double-edged sword. And but time and time again in my life, God has always been the one that, you know, would never give up on me, you know, and I keep coming back to that realizing. And so really my journey has been about trying to learn how to see myself the way that God sees me, because we put on so many masks, you know, we throw on a smile. How are you? Oh, I'm good. How are you? And like, you're not good, right? Not at all. But we have so many walls that we put up to protect ourselves. And a lot of people, society and culture is so good at that. Like they don't even want to know how you're really doing when they ask, you know? And I've seen it a lot, especially everyone wants to have it together. And I've seen a lot of culture in the church where you're just expected to have your stuff together. Otherwise, maybe you're not really a Christian, or maybe, you know, you don't pray enough, or maybe there's something, you know. And so this song kind of vents about that a little bit. And then also ultimately just breaks through the fact that God never turns his back on us. You know, he's the one that is always just trying to pull us back like gravity and save us from ourselves, which to me, like fear and different destructive forces in our lives, to me, it can be like a black hole, just always sucking you in, you know, whenever you are, you know, when you're not resisting. And that's how addiction is for me. It's just like, I realize if I'm not actively taking the steps to act opposite of my natural inclination, then I'm slowly sliding towards the black hole. And then I realize, oh, I'm doing it again. So that's where black hole comes from.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, you touched on some things that, you know, I know there's been times like that with you, like you said, with the church culture. You know, I was raised Catholic. I grew up Catholic. There was things that I didn't agree with and I questioned as a kid. And then I ran out away from the church and was living, you know, a not honorable life. And then when I got saved and I come into like a non-denominational type church, I'm seeking, and I was finding a lot of help there, but I also like, people are people. And if I'm focusing on the people are eventually going to let me down. And some of the same things that you were talking about have happened to me and wounded me. And then it pushes me away. But why am I making God the bad guy in that whole thing and pushing away from God? And like you said, it's like he's always there for us to lean on. But I think of God as like that case, in case of emergency, break glass, pull the alarm, you know, God, I need you. You're there. But then that inner child is also remembering in school, and they said, don't be pulling that alarm unless there's a real emergency. And then I still avoid God a little bit longer, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
So that's a me thing that I still got to keep working on. And the only way to work on it is just like, I remember when like I came home from my deployment and I really hit my bottom. My actions had destroyed the relationship with the mother of my children, wounded my kids, and I wanted to build that back. Now, me and their mother weren't able to work things out. Thankfully, through the work I've been doing, we're at a better place now. I'm in a much better place with my kids. But during that time frame, it was just like I had to have one of those like on the floor, sobbing, giving myself all to God, you know, I think I might be due for that again here soon, the way things have been going. Cause like sometimes old patterns start repeating, even though I'm sober, I'm still me in here, you know?
Yeah.
So I think I'm about due for another, like crying on the floor out to God thing, and drop the whole tough guy stuff and, you know, call back on
There's a lot
God.
of stuff we learned growing up that actually doesn't work, you know? Like
Yeah.
all these lessons we were taught by our parents and by culture and society. And if you live according to that path, you keep finding yourself and like, why isn't this working? It's like, oh, everything they told me was wrong, you know? Like I shouldn't,
Yeah.
you know, men shouldn't cry. Like, oh, well, guess what? That was just a bad idea that somebody had, you know? And now all of our men can't cry, you know, and it's tearing them up inside and it's causing them to explode, you know? It was just a bad idea. So it's so hard. We have to like deprogram ourselves and start to look for the truth and try to find, okay, where is this man that has influenced me? Men told me I should do this, you know? Mankind has given me this, not God. And trying to strip that out is so hard because so many times people will try to manipulate scripture to get power. You know, a lot of times people will they'll use anything, money, any kind of influence they can get and make it about themselves, you know, to build themselves up. And anytime people are trying to build up something other than God, you know, it's going to crash. And so, but that's a lot, especially those of us who might have been raised, you know, in circumstances and just like whole cultures that were based on people's ideas and not really based. They would take scripture and interpret it according to meet what they want, you know? And that is so deceptive, you know? And that is hard to root out. And so it's a battle. But I bet the people listening, as you're telling your story, I bet 50% of people are like, I did that too.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's why I love the rooms of recovery too, because I've been able to just, you know, start shedding that old skin. Like, you know, the lot of shame was built into that as well. Like when you're a kid and you're like, don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about, you know? And it's just like, all right, I got to suck it up, you know? And more of that inner child stuff that my fiance don't want to hear about, but yeah, I'm doing my best.
Yeah, or be perfect or you're going to go to hell, you know?
Yeah.
Like this is crazy. That's high stakes, right?
Oh no. Yeah.
I don't want to burn forever. So yeah, let me fall in line here. And now when I'm trying to unlearn things that aren't exactly right, they twist things, you know, when you're trying to untwist that, that's going to unlock terror. And no wonder our inner children are just like building walls, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I remember all the hoops I jumped through as a kid being raised Catholic and stuff. And they're like, okay, if I do this next thing and go through this next thing, God will like me more or whatever, you know? And then it got to the point with the whole, like, for me, unfortunately, confession, it's like I'd go in there and I'd say, man, I really did a lot of awful stuff. Okay, a couple Hail Marys. Oh, I'm good to go. And it was like a dry erase board. And I erase it, and then I just start filling it up the next week, you know, of more like sinful actions or stuff I should be ashamed of or whatever, you know?
Trying to fill that emptiness, you know, and unfortunately
Yeah.
it doesn't fill up that way. So you have to keep trying, you know, until you find what truly brings the healing, you know, and really brings the peace. And that's a journey.
Yeah. Yep. Now, it mentions like Romans 8:38-39 for it, you know, part of the inspiration for Black Hole. You want to share with the listeners about that?
Well, I don't have it memorized, but yeah, the gist of the the gist of the text is, you know, that you lost it again. We're gonna have to X again.
So yeah, I think we were talking about what Romans 8:38 and 39. Yeah.
Yeah, that scripture talks about how there's nothing that can separate us from God's love. Not angels nor demons, nothing. And that is the heart of the song, of trying to just help us remember, like, because I know, like, we talked about this, we carry all this shame, you know, and I remember one time I was reading the Bible and it talked about how, you know, Jesus died to take away our sin and our shame, you know, and I'd always thought about the sin stuff and everything, but I hadn't thought about the shame. And I really became convicted about the fact that I was choosing to carry all this self-hatred, you know, for things that Jesus died to wipe away. So am I saying that Jesus's blood was not enough? Not enough. It was enough to cover the sin, you know, but not enough, you know, for me to stop hating myself. And I got really convicted by that, which is usually the only way that I do good about getting better at stuff, is if I feel like I'm being a bad person.
Yeah.
That's my code. So I got convicted about that, and I was like, you know, if I am continually piling on this shame and hatred for myself every day, I am continually denying the power of God's sacrifice. And that is not right. So I need to live by faith. And for me, the biggest thing for me is just over and over asking God to help me see myself the way he sees me, you know, who he created me to be. And in turn, that helps me to love myself better, which is the only way that I can love anybody else. Because truly, no one knows me like God does. And no one knows anyone the way that God does. And so I can't love other people unless I'm seeing them through, you know, God's perspective, because my perspective is totally jaded. It always makes me the good guy and the right one. It never considers that, oh, maybe actually I'm the one who was out of line. That never happens first. I have to push through, you know, like, no, it's your fault first. And so it takes a force bigger than yourself, a higher power, in my opinion, to truly love others. And so, but we have to start, because it says, you know, we have to love others as we love ourselves. Well, we can't even love ourselves. There's just no hope for loving anyone else. So the only way to share God's love with this world is to start by healing yourself and accepting, you know, God's gift. Or you're just you're dead in the water before you even start. So yeah, that verse just really hammers in about how, like, oh, what do you think is keeping you from God? Because the Bible says that nothing can separate you from the love of God. So you know, we put up our own stop signs and then we ask why God doesn't come, you know, but we won't let him close because of our own shame.
Yeah. I feel like you're telling my story right now. I
know story. I'm telling all of our stories. It's just all of us.
Yeah. I mean, I know for the longest time, you know, like, and it still creeps its ugly head in, but I would let the shame and guilt of my past keep me anchored from moving forward. And as I've been working in recovery and building that new relationship with God and my higher power, you know, I've been learning slowly to start loving myself. And when people love me, I'm learning to accept the compliments and stuff instead of like
Yeah.
making up, well, I didn't do this right, or I didn't do that right,
Right.
or like just like self-sabotaging it because I don't feel like I'm worthy of it and stuff. And then
Yeah.
the other thing that catches me sometimes now is like I future cast. I look ahead too far, like, oh, but this is going to end up like
Yeah.
this, or that's going to end up like that, instead of listening to what scripture says and be still in the moment and know God and be with God, you know?
Totally. We call it
So
future
yeah, yeah, I do that quite a bit, you know? But also, like, I seen that you guys got to work with Josiah Prince. What was that experience like?
That's super awesome. Me and Josiah got to get together, and he's produced all of Fireflight's most recent projects and everything like that. Just a great guy. Loved touring with him with Disciple, and now getting to work with him in the studio. It's just a dream come true because he's just a great guy. So awesome to work with. So brilliant. So talented, and so I just feel so lucky. And it was an interesting experience for me because actually, like, building the band, like, that has come out, like, that was like a journey that God brought me in, but God brought, like, these songs for this EP, God brought those first. And then through the time I realized, that it was time to, like, do this with another band, And so I'm really excited because in the next couple months, we're going to be going back into the studio with Josiah, and the girls are coming too. And we're all going to get to work together. And I can't wait for them to experience working with Josiah because it's so cool to go into a room and just be able to trust each other and just wait for God to inspire us, and then be able to build on each other and encourage each other. And I can't wait for them to experience that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've had Kevin from Disciple on the show before. And also I seen that you're recently on the road with Seventh Day Slumber. I've had Joseph on here as well.
Yep. We're at a show right now. Last show of our tour, the Beautiful Madness Tour, is tonight.
Yeah. And me and him had a real good conversation about
Rose.
addiction and recovery and stuff. But I'm curious too, like, how did you ladies all meet and come together to form this?
Yeah, it's a total God thing. Just like it hasn't. It's been pretty recent. We're so brand new, Like I said, the songs. God to give me the songs, and then I just started trying to figure out like what God was going to do with it, because I didn't really have. I have 2 young children, and I was like, I don't know how I could. And I toured for like 18 years, and that was a long journey. Fireflight decided to step off of touring in 2020 with the pandemic for obvious reasons. And I didn't know that I'd ever saw myself like going out again on tour, but God just really started like, we talk about all the trauma of the pandemic and anger and all that stuff. I've just spent like the last 6 years like super angry all the time. Every time I turn on the television, every time I see something and I just feel like this world is letting me down. People are letting me down. Sorry, Ash has a cough. She got a cough on the bus, so she keeps excusing herself to get her water. The real trooper. And so just in the last year or so, finally, like, I've just been feeling like God was saying, Dawn, like, I still have this calling on your life that you need to go out and share the message, share the message of my love. And so I was like, okay. And I started trying to think about doing that, And I remembered talking with Ash. Ash reached out like several years ago, and she's like, hey, like, I'm a young woman coming up in the music industry. Do you have any feedback for me or that kind of stuff? And so we just made a connection online, and I had checked out her stuff, and I was like, wow, she's incredible. She's amazing. I was like, I don't know anybody starting bands right now, but if ever I hear of anything, I'll pass your name along. This was years ago. And so I was like, I wonder how she's doing. What's she up to, And so, like, I moved back to her Instagram. And I was like, oh, look, she's starting to travel. So I was like, hey, what are you doing? Are you traveling? Are you touring, And she's like, yes, I am. And I was like, neat. Well, I'm thinking about doing music again and traveling. I don't know how that looks for you or whatever. I'll let Ash take it from there.
Yeah, and it's insane because I am a Fireflight fan, so I never thought I would get to work with Dawn Michelle. So I am like, just wow. living in an answered prayer for sure. Christian
Oh.
rock is definitely like right up my alley. So I'm so happy and so blessed to be able to be a part of this. And that Dawn remembered me, that is a total God thing. So.
And it's a total God thing as well, because both of these ladies, I keep saying everybody that I'm officially like the least talented person on stage, and I could not love it anymore. Yes.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, like I keep saying that I'm officially like the least talented person on stage because these women are so incredible. So it's a huge God thing that Ash was even available. Like, I don't know how she's not on tour with like some mega group.
She is so sweet.
No, it's 100%
I'm so
accurate.
happy to be here.
No, I'm not a good liar. So. But no, she has a bachelor's in guitar from Berkeley Music School, just to let you know.
Oh, nice.
And so she's amazing. So I was like, wow. And we reconnected, we got coffee, and I was like, yeah, we did a vibe check. I was like, yeah, she seems really nice too, you know? And then I was like, man, I just really want a female dominated band. We talked about your daughters, you know, there's so many young women and girls who don't ever imagine, you know, a music life for themselves, you know? And so we want more representation for women and girls everywhere. And so I had known a female drummer, and I kind of checked in with her, but she wasn't like, her place in life was not for touring. Like, she just couldn't. And so I was like, all right. So I just started like looking around, and I literally went on Instagram and I said, female drummers Nashville. and Gina came up, and so I was trying to find, most times when you do that, you find like pictures of people on the drum set. But the first thing that popped up was her sitting on her bed talking. So I was like, okay. So I clicked on it, and I listened. She's talking about how she just made this journey to move to Nashville, like in the last 6 months, because she felt like that's what's the next step she needed to do in her music career. And how she was really kind of stepping out in faith and all that stuff. So I started looking at her drum videos. I was like, oh my gosh, she's incredible. And so I was just like, hi, my name's Dawn. I'm making a new band. What are you up to? And she wrote me back. And so we met for coffee. And then I think we might be losing connection again. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You guys are good. I can hear you. Can you hear me? All right.
So when I found out that, you know, when she messaged me back and said that she, you know, was looking to play. And so we met for coffee, and that went awesome. And she told me about her journey and everything that she'd been praying for. And I was like, okay, I'm going to send you the songs. Okay, will you please be our drummer? And she didn't blow us up. And here we are. Altira.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. I love that. You're stepping out in faith and look at what God's doing here. You know, that's pretty amazing in itself. Now, before we get ready and wrap up, I want to like let people out there that might be new to hearing about Altira, like how they can keep in touch or follow your journey or support you guys.
Absolutely. They can come find our antics on it's the @ Altira Music for Instagram and Facebook. And also you can come to our website, which is altiramusic.com. It's ALTIRA, altiramusic.com. And on there you can find our schedule for our shows. You can pre-save our newest single, which is getting available for pre-save for coming out in a couple of weeks, and you can download our current single that came out at the beginning of this month. And so the current single is Black Hole, and now Here I Am is the next single, and it is up for pre-saves right now. So you go to altiramusic.com and check us out there.
Awesome, amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation. I needed it.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks for what you do, and thank you for support.
Awesome. Well, I hope to see you ladies come through the Cleveland area sometime in the future.
Awesome. We do too.
All right. You take care.
You take care too. Thank you.
Bye.
grab your girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now, here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland